I
Okay.
understand. All right, before we get into the headlines, though, let's get into one of the bigger stories. We can explore this a little bit. It's about Sergiño Dest. Now, shout out to Tillman, who I just mentioned is going to be signed on a permanent deal with PSV from Bayern Munich. That's awesome. We're excited for him, and obviously he had a terrific season being a part of the Eredivisie champions this year. But Sergiño Dest, PSV has come out and announced that they're going to pass on making his deal permanent. And so the big question is this just a move, knowing that the value that he once was at is not the same because he had that ACL tear? Jesse, I'll come to you first. Or do you really feel like PSV is just ready to move on from him, and then it's going to be up to Barcelona to find a different destination because him and Xavi don't really see eye to eye? What do you
Well,
think?
I would think, first of all, if he was healthy, that this would be a different. I think they would, if they could, they would uh, buy him. Right? He's had a great year for PSV. I think he's been one of their best players. And he's played on the left, on the right. He's filled in a lot of gaps for them whenever they've needed it. He's been outstanding this year. So I don't know that it's really a true indication of what the club thinks about him. The next part is, yeah, I mean, is does PSV have enough money to buy him, or is Serginho's price tag above what they could offer? And then is Serginho's ambition higher than PSV, even though he's had a great year? So there's a number of factors that we'd have to consider before we'd actually know what's happening behind the scenes. But nonetheless, I do think that in general, Sergiño Dest is his level and quality is above the Dutch league, right? And even though they're champions and they're playing in Champions League, I think he needs to be tested at a higher level, and he's a better player than. And even though now Holland is the fifth in the quotient, the European quotient, I still think he's a top four. He belongs in the top four leagues.
Okay, so Chuck, then where would be a nice fit for him? Let's just say it doesn't work at PSV. Barcelona doesn't want to sign him. Where do you think would be a good fit? And I'm just going to jump in and say that I think Bayer Leverkusen, and given the way that they play, would be a nice fit. I don't think he's going to end up at Bayer Leverkusen, but I'm just saying a team that has that type of system where they have Frimpong on one side, Grimaldo on the other, just bombing up and down, would be a nice fit for him. And I wonder if you think there are other teams out there that or if you even agree with that would be a similar spot where he could really showcase what he does best, which is getting forward.
Well, you must have been reading my mind because that's exactly what I was going to say. In terms of
All right.
if Frimpong leaves Bayer Leverkusen, which I know teams are interested in, I mean, he'll have a high price tag, but it seems to me that most of the Bayer Leverkusen players will be staying put because they don't need to sell anyone and they're playing in Champions League. So why wouldn't you see this one out and see how far they can go, given they haven't lost in 40 plus matches, right? So I think for me, the Bundesliga would be the right step for him in a wingback spot. You got to think Frimpong. He's not the most defensive minded wingback. He's more of an attacking minded. Same like with Grimaldo, and that type of setup with that philosophy from your wingbacks that will suit Sergiño Dest. And to answer Jesse's question on where Sergiño Dest thinks his ability lies and what he thinks of himself, I think he's already made it clear that PSV aren't quite at the level that he sees himself at competing at on the regular. I think it's tough when you go to a club, you leave Ajax in the history that club has, go to a Barcelona that, yes, it's a step back to go to PSV, but it's to find his feet, and he played in Champions League, but in his mind, he conquered that, right? He was above that. He doesn't want to go back down to that level. In his mind, he wants to play in the Champions League, wants to play in the biggest clubs in the world and stay in that level. But ultimately, I think he's going to have to find himself in the Bundesliga. The problem is he's not healthy, and you're going to have to wait 6 months to get back on the pitch, right? To just get back on the pitch. And clubs aren't going to invest a whole lot of money in someone who's coming back from an ACL. You got to prove that you're back, prove that you're fit, and you didn't lose a step or two before those conversations can really start again.
Yeah, I'm curious as to what Barcelona does with this situation. I mean, I think they'll be respectful, of course, and polite, but it doesn't mean they necessarily want him playing for his team. Jesse, I actually want to get your thoughts on Dest and where you think a great spot would be for him, and if you agree with Chuck that it's in the Bundesliga as an option. But I do want to compare the best seasons of Dest's career. 2020, 2021 was with Barcelona. He had 44 appearances that season, 33 starts, 2,800 minutes overall, 3 goals, 1 assist. Now, that was primarily under Ronald Koeman, who really valued Sergiño Dest when he brought to the table. Once Xavi came in, obviously a different story. Then this year with PSV, 33 appearances, 32 starts, 2,700 minutes, 2 goals, 7 assists. When the guy's healthy and playing, he does make a difference for his respective clubs. But where do you think would be a good destination for him, Jesse?
Yeah, I think, like you said, Charlie, I think first, it's unlikely that anything happens this summer. The timing of this injury is really bad for him, given it's the end of a loan, given there's Copa America in the summer. And if anything's going to happen, it's likely to happen in the winter, right? And European standards for ACL are usually more like 8 months. The most places here in Europe, they don't look to rush players back. They look to build a really good foundation. And the studies have shown that if you take longer in your recovery, that the strength and ability to come back and have no setbacks is better. So that 8 months, that means that he's looking at being back, training in like November. And if that's the, November, December. So if that's the case, then maybe he gets himself in a few matches, or he's healthy again, and maybe even training with the team, and then maybe is able to make a transfer at that point. But listen, he could play a lot of places. I of course, like you'd want to supplement him in teams that want to attack and play with a wide wing back that can get up and down the pitch, and he's able to do so many of these things. I've said all along that I think the main thing for him is if he can continue to develop himself defensively, and if he can develop a really strong defensive mentality, and now in 1v1 situations, because he's got a low center of gravity, he should be able to do well even against really good attackers. If he adds that to his repertoire, then you can start to place him amongst the best fullbacks in the world, really. And then I think he'd have lots of options. So that's going to be his biggest challenge is in his overall development. Can he show that he can defend? We saw in Nations League when he played against Chucky Lozano that he almost, shut him down for the whole match. If he can now perform like that week in and week out, I think his upside is huge.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. So we're going to pivot here into headlines, and obviously there's plenty of time to talk about Sergiño Dest because his injury is not going away for quite some time.